Hi, everybody. Using the theme for this week of rocks, I have this book. It's called Pocket Rocks, and it is written by Sherry Fitch and illustrated by Helen Fluke. I'm going to try really, really hard to show you the pictures. I still can't quite get the balance here. I want you to listen to the story, and then there's going to be a couple little activities that you can do with this or other rock activities that you'd like to do afterwards. Okay, so here it is, Pocket Rocks. There once was a boy named Ian Gooby. Every morning he looked into the mirror to say hello to himself. His chin was pointy and his forehead was wide. Just like an upside-down triangle, he said, and scrunched up his nose, scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. Every morning Ian Gooby knocked on his head, knock, knock. Time to come out, he said. He brushed his hair, soft as dandelion fuzz or a whisper. Ian Gooby smiled his widest smile. Ian, time for school, called his mother. Ian Gooby smiled, drooped, and wobbled and turned into a scribbly line. The thing of it was, Ian wished every day was someplace else. Or summertime, or Saturday. He wished he could go anyplace else but school. It wasn't his teacher. He liked Mrs. Dingle. Mrs. Dingle's voice was marshmallow, and she smelled like lemon shampoo. He liked BJ too. His eyes were as brown and kind as melting chocolate chips. But even with BJ's help, no matter how hard Ian Gooby tried, he could not do the things everyone else could do. Ian, called his mother in her hurry-up voice. Ian Gooby wanted to crawl inside the mirror and stay there all day. Instead, his hands turned into a sad little butterfly. He waved goodbye to himself and went to school. Day after day was the same until the morning Ian found a rock the size and shape of an egg, but not white. A rock as black as shoe polish, still in the tin and speckled all over with teeny white flakes. Ian picked up the rock. It was smooth and cool against his cheek. Ian sniffed the rock. Sometimes smell made pictures in his head. Ian closed his eyes. Swish, swoosh, swish. Ian was flying in a tunnel of wind. He looped and spiraled and dipped and swooped until he landed in an emerald green jungle. Ian opened his eyes. Jungle rock, he said with a giggle. Ian cradled the rock in his hands. Rock-a-bye, 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 rock, he whispered. When he was sure the rock was fast asleep, he tucked it into his pocket, his left pocket, and he went into school. That day, Ian tried his hardest ever when it was time for printing. BJ helped. But every line that was meant to stand up fell down. Every line that was meant to be straight curled like the curliest hair on Ian Gooby's head. Ian Gooby got a fluttery feeling in his belly as if a small bird were in there trying to get free. Then he remembered. Inside his pocket was a whole other world. Thinking of Jungle Rock made the fluttery feeling go away. Ian Gooby smiled and kept trying to print. Every day for many days, Ian put rocks in his pockets. Moon Rock and King Rock, Turtle Rock and Tiger Rock, Kangaroo Rock, and many, many more. Swish, swoosh, swish! With every rock he flew away in a tunnel of wind and landed whole other worlds. When he opened his eyes, he whispered to each and every rock, rock-a-bye, 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 rock. When he was sure they were all fast asleep, he tucked them into his pockets, left and right. Take a look at the pictures of the rocks that he's finding. I don't know if you can see the pictures. In school, his pencil was still not much of a friend. He tried to make a tent with legs and it turned into a vase. He put flowers in it. He tried to make a mountain and a valley, but it turned into a Z. But when his heart pounded or his head filled with too much noise, he remembered his rock-a-bye rocks. They were his friends. Swish, swoosh, swish. They flew him away in tunnels of winds until he landed in whole other worlds. Day after day was the same until the day of the disaster. At recess, Ian was making something for BJ with his rock-a-bye rocks. The bell rang. But Ian Gooby wasn't finished. That was bad enough. But things got worse. Fast as he could, Ian Gooby scooped up the rocks he hadn't used, stuffed them into his pockets, and ran towards the rest of the class. Too many rocks. Ian Gooby had stuffed too many rocks in his pockets, and while he was running, his pants fell down. Ian stopped, stone still. Somebody laughed. Ian Gooby's got rocks in his head, his pants fell down, and his face is red, shouted Trevor. He was the fastest printer and reader in the whole class. Shh, Mrs. Dingle said. That's enough. Her voice was hard as burnt marshmallows. Poor Ian. Ian Gooby never remembered much about the next 15 minutes except his voice was a siren. BJ took him to the quiet room. He waited until Ian stopped being a fire engine. He waited until there was nothing left to blow from Ian Gooby's nose. Now let's go back to class, BJ said. We've got a visitor. Ian took BJ's hand, but he kept his head down just in case he could find a rock-a-bye rock. Of course, there were none to be found. And at this point of the story, I want to remind you that if you look down the website, you're going to be able to find another read aloud story for me called When Sophie Gets Angry, Really, Really Angry. So this is kind of connected with me. I made a connection between that book and this part here. The visitor looked like an upside-down capital T. His hair was the color of squash. Ian did not like squash. His beard looked like a small broom stuck into his chin. Some stories are read, some stories are said, and some stories rhyme, said the man in a trumpety voice. Once upon a time, he began. He told story after story after story. Ian closed his ears. He closed his eyes. I want my rock-a-bye rocks, he hissed. Later, Ian, said BJ. I promise when the stories are over. But when the stories were over, the children had questions. How long have you been collecting stories? Asked Sue Ellen. For a long time, said the man. But when I was a boy, I collected rocks. Always had rocks in my pocket. Still do. He reached into his pocket and held one up. Ian stared at the man with the rock in his hand. He nodded his head up and down. BJ looked at the man. The man looked at BJ. They nodded their heads too. It was Ian's turn with BJ's help to tell his story. The man scratched his whiskers when Ian got to the part about his pants falling down. He whispered a secret in Ian's ear. Your whiskers tickle, said Ian. They are not scratchy like a broom at all. The storyteller laughed and laughed and gave Ian the rock. Everyone clapped. Even Trevor. As always, BJ kept his promise. He took Ian outside to pick up his rockabye rocks. Let's put them in a can for now, Ian, he said. But Ian tugged at BJ's arm. Over there, he said. Ian worked so hard that he bit his tongue. When he stood back so that BJ could see, then he stood back to see so that he, blah, blah, blah. Then he stood back so that BJ could see his present. The straight line of rocks hardly squiggled. The tent was a tent with legs, not a vase filled with flowers, and instead of a Z, he had made a mountain and a valley. I-A-N, shouted BJ. Ian, you did it! BJ picked Ian up and swirled him around and around in a tunnel of wind. Nowadays, Ian Gooby keeps rocks all over his house. He keeps them in boxes and in cans and baskets. He has a pouch for rocks that Mrs. Dingle made especially for him. He still keeps a few rocks in his pockets, and he never worries about his pants. So this story is based on a real story about a real boy. On the website, there's some activities for you to do as a follow-up to this. It's your choice to decide what you'd like to do with your rock this week, but I would like to see you with one activity about a rock handed in to me by the end of the week before the next week's assignments are handed out. So do take a look at the website. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for listening.